Welcome back to another book recommendation video. Today we're doing what I'm calling diet science fiction, light sci-fi, books that you could maybe barely even qualify as science fiction. Some you might not even notice are sci-fi until a little ways into the book, who knows? It's pretty much the exact opposite of hard sci-fi. And we're going to start this off with a book from one of my favorite authors ever, and that is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. And this was also made into a movie a little while ago, and it is a story of these kids going through this school and their process and their lives as they grow up in this particular school in England. And there's something different about this school. It's not quite like other schools, and there's something different about the kids that go to this school. Only certain kids are allowed in and only go here. So what is different about this school, and what is different about these students? And that is kind of the mystery of the first half of the book or so, until you realize what exactly is going on in this school with these kids. And that is the sci-fi twist that is in this book. But it is so much more than about the sci-fi twist. It is about that, but it's much more about the lives of the people in the book and how they interact with each other and how they connect with each other and how those connections that and the bonds that they form in this school grow and evolve and change over time. In the second half of the book, we will follow them later into their lives after they leave the school and how the bonds and relationships then grow and change and evolve from there. And also how this thing that makes the school special and makes them special in the school will impact them in their lives in the moment and later as they move on into their lives. I really don't want to say much more than that because it feels like I would be dipping into spoiler territory, but I will say it is so much more, just like all Kazuo Ishiguro books, it's so much less about the science and the fiction and all of that, and so much more about the characters, the bonds, the relationships, and just the human element of it. He has a way of tapping into the human soul and the human experience that most other authors would just never be able to replicate. They're very event light. There's not a whole lot of crazy stuff going on in a Kazuo book. It is much more about the human experience. But he touches the human experience in a way that most people couldn't even dream of. Next up, we're going to move on into a new favorite of mine, Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, and I'm going to be moving into more Kurt Vonnegut as soon as I can because this guy is amazing, or at the very least, this book is amazing. And this is a quasi-autobiographical book about a man who goes to World War II and he gets stuck in a POW camp, and it is the exact same POW camp that Kurt Vonnegut himself was in when he was in World War II, which is why it's quasi-autobiographical. But he shifts it into the science fiction by around the time that he goes to this camp, he's also abducted by aliens, and he's taken by these aliens and he's put in a zoo as an exhibit of what human life is. But when he's abducted by aliens, he also becomes unstuck in time. So then he starts to experience time non-linearly. So the book will be like, one scene is when he's a kid growing up, and then the next scene will be him in that prison camp, then the next scene will be him as an old man, then the next scene will be him in a hospital that he had to go to because of his mental problems that he had after being released from the POW camp. Then it's back to his childhood, then it's back to him being in a zoo on the alien planet. And it is so wonderful, and it's just so wonderfully structured and wonderfully told. Now, what I will say is this is a very heavy book dealing with very heavy themes and ideas and just what happens in a POW camp and what happens to a human in that situation and after that situation. Also, the struggles of war, the stress of war, what war does to society, what war does to this one particular man. And the themes and the topics are so heavy, and he finds a way to make it almost silly, and there is this real irreverent sense of humor that runs through the center of the entire book. You will be laughing at certain scenes that would not be funny in a different book, in a different setting, and told in a different way because the themes are so heavy. But why I think this is pretty much a near perfect book is because he takes such heavy subject matter and he found a way of flipping it and mixing it and making it just light enough to make it enjoyable, make it such a fast and quick read, and at the same time make it so it doesn't bog you down and weigh you down with what he's trying to tell you. There's a way he could have written this book straightforward, linearly, start to finish, remove the whole weird alien abduction aspect, and it would have been a difficult read to get through. It would have bogged the book down, and it would have been crushed under its own weight. So I say just sheer, near masterpiece level of writing and an experience. I loved it so much. Next up, we're going to go with my boy, Philip K. Dick, with The Man in the High Castle. And this is a alternate history book that he wrote about 15 years after World War II or something like that. It's essentially, what if the Nazis or the Axis powers won World War II, and then we move on into the story from there. But in true Philip K. Dick fashion, it's just weird, it's wacky. He's not going to follow a typical plot per se. He's going to follow an antiques dealer who's just working his everyday 9-to-5 grind in his antique shop, because in this world of post World War II where the Axis wins, America's basically done and over with. The Germans and the Japanese split the country. The Germans take the East Coast, the Japanese take the West Coast, and we are in California, so we're following the Japanese section of the United States of America, which then is overrun by racism, and basically all black people are imprisoned, and the Chinese become second-class citizens. But because the United States has been basically eradicated, now Americana is hailed as these like sacred artifacts. So people just fighting over these old American artifacts because the country is essentially no more, which is how we end up following an antiques dealer. Then in the book, there's this weird book within the book, which is a piece of narrative fiction that this guy has written. I forget what it's called. The Grasshopper something. I'll put it on the screen. There's this book within the story where somebody has written a fictionalized book of what if the Axis powers lost the war. So it's like a book within a book within a book. It's fabulous. And then on top of that, there's this whole idea of woo, which is like the internal spiritual energy inside of objects, which then becomes a factor with all these antiques in the antique store. It gets way out into the weeds and some weird, crazy Philip K. Dick style ideas. At the same time, this is the one book by Philip K. Dick that won the Hugo Award, the only one he ever won. And it is also one of his most restrained books, because he has a tendency to get way out there with crazy multiple worlds, parallel universes, time travel, and just drugs, psychotic, trippy, weird, aliens, he gets weird. And this is, like I said, one of his most restrained, dialed back books, and it's just a parallel alternate history in the 1950s or whenever it was written. But it's fabulous, and I cannot recommend reading it enough. If you're just getting into Philip K. Dick, maybe try Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and then move on to this if you want to see a slightly dialed back version of him. But it's got a really good idea of him, his style, his writing. And if you've read a few of them and you haven't gotten to this one yet, I say pick it up, because then you'll understand exactly why this one got the Hugo Award. Because as soon as I read it, I said, yep, I get it. Oh boy, do I get it. Next up is The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. And this is, first off, I'm going to pause the whole video to say this is a first edition paperback. I don't know if you can see it. Oh my gosh. My fiance bought me this as a present, and I don't even know how to express how ecstatic I was when I received this. Thank you. Anyway, now, The Left Hand of Darkness is a book by Ursula K. Le Guin in the Hainish cycle, which actually is the only book in the Hainish cycle that I have ever read. Only two books I've read by her is this and A Wizard of Earthsea. But anyway, Left Hand of Darkness is a story about a man, a Terran man, who goes to a planet, and he is going to try to convince them to join this galactic federation or this group of planets, essentially. And when he gets to the planet's surface, they refuse. Now, the trick with this planet is the people that live on this planet are genderless. They have no male or female gender. So this immediately causes tension and problems between our main character, who is a male human essentially, and the genderless people on the planet, because they don't really have a way of communicating smoothly. The weird androgynous people on the planet make our main character feel uneasy, and the strong masculine energy of our main character make the androgynous peoples of this planet uneasy. Then as the story goes on, our main character and one of the people from this planet are going to end up having to go on kind of a mission and a quest, and they go out and they have to travel across the ice, and they have to travel together for a period of time. And through the course of traveling together, these two people are going to have to learn how to get along, have to learn how to trust each other, and maybe even become friends by the end of it. And it's really ultimately one big contemplation on society and how groups of people communicate and interact and how they get along. But at the same time, it's also a contemplation on gender and the role that gender plays in the communication between people and groups of people and societies of people. And is gender relevant, or is gender even necessary, and how affecting that gender or whatever, male versus female or just male versus non-male, and then learning and growing and evolving your understanding of another group of people or another gender of people, and then evolving how you communicate with each other, or maybe even evolving your understanding of each other. And I'm going to say that's me scratching the surface of it and my very surface level understanding, because I read this once, and I'm not even going to try and pretend like I am any type of an expert on any of it. And then last but not least is going to be another one of my favorite authors, and that is Haruki Murakami, and that is The Hard-Boiled Wonderland and The End of the World. The one and only science fiction book in his entire catalog, and it is barely science fiction. Let's be real. That's kind of, this is the whole point of this video, is talk about these barely science fiction books. Anyway, it is two separate stories being told simultaneously, one chapter then the other, and we bounce back and forth between the two. In the one, The Hard-Boiled Wonderland is essentially the science fiction portion of the story, and it is this quasi-sci-fi world where we have these people that are like basically essentially almost like human computers, where they are analysts and they analyze all this information. And on the other side of it, we have like the counter analysts, and they're working for a like pseudo governmental group, and they are kind of working against the counter terrorists throughout the book. And he's basically going to go on this detective mission trying to counteract the terrorists, while on the other side of the story we have the end of the world. And this is a strange, almost mystical city, a walled city, where we follow a man who's a newcomer to the city. And when you enter the city, you have to give up your shadow, and he is separated from his shadow, where his shadow stays at the wall and he goes into the city. And there are weird unicorns outside the walls of the city, and there's a strange library where he goes and he'll visit, and he seems to not be able to remember anything prior to him entering this city, but the city's so just peaceful and serene, and everything about it's just so mild and subdued and almost just melancholy at times. And his shadow wants to leave, and he wants to rejoin with him so they can leave the city together. But he seems quite content staying, and the city seems to want him to stay. And the whole time you're trying to figure out, what do these two stories have to do with each other? One's almost like a detective story in a quasi science fiction world. The other one's this weird, serene town of a walled city where people have no shadows. And you're just trying to figure out, what does one have to do with the other? Do they have anything to do with each other? Do the characters have anything to do with each other? And it's just this weird, strange experience of a book. The whole thing is just like wandering through a dream, which, to be fair, is kind of like every other Murakami book out there. He has this really strange dreamlike quality to the way that he writes and the way that you kind of experience the reality in one of his stories. And in this one, you're being split between these two drastically different realities with these two main characters that are both kind of wrapped up in their own unique mysteries, and we're trying to follow it all at the same time and see where we come out on the other side. And it's just a wonderful experience. Haruki Murakami's wonderful. Everything about it's wonderful. I love it so much. I love him so much. And I can't recommend that you read it enough. Just like everything else, I just like books. Anyway, everybody, as always, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.